Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Foresight TV. I am talking to Ben Chapman with Pegasus Senior Living. We are going to be, there are two things that are near and dear to my heart. The first is workplace culture, followed almost right behind it, almost parallel to it, is the culture for residents, the resident experience. We're going to, Ben and Pegasus are doing some amazing things. We're going to be talking about that right after this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. So Ben, first thing I got to say is, well, every once in a while I'll say something, and then I think, boy, I bet that really sounded dumb. So it's like right after this, that I don't know what I said there. Anyway, but Ben, welcome so much. Welcome to Foresight TV. You are an engagement specialist for Pegasus Senior Living, and you are working on programs that actually connect residents across multiple senior living communities to engage and talk to each other. And so I want to start with the question I start with virtually every guest. What is it that you're passionate about? What problems are you changing in the world of senior living?
Sure, absolutely. As people age, Steve, especially people, with cognitive decline, but even as people age, there seems to be a disconnection. People end up disconnected. They disconnect from family, they disconnect from friends, they disconnect from the world, the external community, and then on some level, they disconnect from themselves as well. Social isolation is a big issue with seniors. So for me, I guess to answer your question, what is my big mission? It's kind of about recreating those connections. For me, that's kind of the core of what engagement and life enrichment really is. It's about building relationships. It's about rebuilding those connections, and it's about building community culture, even.
Correct. I love that so much. I have to ask, how did you get into this business of senior living and life enrichment?
It's kind of a funny story, and I'll tell you the honest story of it. I kind of stumbled into it a little bit, Steve, and I was very lucky to do so, and I've been very lucky that I've had some wonderful mentors along the way who have been willing to teach me, and show me the ropes of this industry. But prior to doing this, I worked in the nonprofit sphere. I did marketing and fund development, so grant writing, volunteer coordination, things of that nature. And then after, so many years of that, several years of that, I kind of needed a change. And it was actually my wife. My wife was like, you know what? I think you get along with old people. Why don't you go? You got that personality. You got an old soul. Why don't you go take a look at those kind of jobs? And I ended up working for a community as an activities personnel, with working with people who were experiencing dementia. And even during that initial interview, I remember telling that memory care director at the time, listen, I don't know much about dementia. I know very little about senior living, but I'm willing to learn. I'm interested in this. I think there's real meaning here. So if you're willing to teach me, I'm happy to learn. And so I did that for several years, and like I said, I've been incredibly fortunate in that I've had wonderful experiences with residents. I've known some incredible care partners. I've known some wonderful executive directors, and I've known wonderful memory care folks who have been willing to kind of teach me and coach me and get me to where I am today.
I love that story. I don't talk about it often, but I really initially got into senior living because I thought it was a way to get rich. Most people have these wonderful, heartfelt stories, and mine was just pure, unadulterated greed. I will tell you, I ultimately fell in love with it and the people, so that's not my motivation anymore.
Well, I can
But
respect that, Steve.
yeah, but that's sort of my not brilliant confession. So when you start programs, you do something that's brilliant. I'm not sure I've heard anybody ever articulate this before, but you actually sit down and you talk to residents and you ask them what they miss the most.
Absolutely.
Can you talk to me about that?
Sure, absolutely. So, I'll start by, I guess, explaining what my role with Pegasus is a little bit more. I'm incredibly privileged in that I get to go to various communities, Pegasus communities, and work with memory care directors. I get to work with life enrichment directors, and of course, other leaderships, and create and help create these robust programmings. So in that capacity, everywhere I go, I always, as much as I can, I try to make it a point to sit and talk with residents, and talk with them about what it is they miss, what it is they'd like to do, if they have any feedback for me. And you'll be amazed the kind of things you hear. And often it's stuff you hear before, stuff that they used to do. Uh, there's a quote that I love, and I can't remember off the top of my head who said it, but I read it once, and I thought this was very profound for this industry. It was, "You don't stop playing because you grow old. You grow old because you stop playing." And I think that kind of encapsulates that so well. So talking to residents, talking about what they miss, talking about what they want to do and what they want to see more of is truly the first step to building programmings with residents, and building resident-centered programming.
So I love this so much. And as I read this and I was thinking about it, I was preparing for our interview. And just now, as you're talking about it, while I love the question a lot, one of the things that is really bothersome to me is this idea that people are moving into senior living and they're not getting to do things they used to do. So it's like senior living isn't real life. And I'm glad you're tackling it because I think that that's a reality that we don't talk much about it. And this should be the goal, right? Is to give people as much of their life before senior living as we to make it as much like home as before, right?
Absolutely. You want to inspire as much dignity as you can, as much independence as you can, and really help residents build those connections. Like I said, at the core, this work of what we do with life engagement, is all about building relationships. At its
Yeah.
core, that is what it is. Building relationships between residents, building relationships between staff and residents, and on some extent, even helping build that staff on staff relationship. The engagement team of a community is truly the culture driver, in my opinion, of a community and what that really looks like. So
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that, and I think that it better elevates what life enrichment it could and should be in communities, and too often is not. The one thing I'd love to add, or maybe I'll start with an asking this. I've got it sort of later in my list of questions. I usually mess it up anyway, so it doesn't matter. Is this? What about family members? I think that mostly senior living organizations don't pay enough attention to family members. I'm a consumer, I am a family member, and so this is really I've had a heightened awareness. Thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Family is pivotal for engagement. Getting to know our residents, getting to know their backgrounds, getting to know their families. These are pivotal pieces of engagement. Hosting family nights, getting family into the community, to engage with their residents, keeping open dialogues with family. I can speak to saying that I know for a fact that many of our engagement directors have wonderful relationships with the families, and the sons and daughters and grandchildren and spouses and so on and so forth of our residents. So, absolutely, tapping into family and inviting them in and doing things with them and for them, is key.
I love that so much. So I sort of a hard question for you. When
Okay.
you look around, this is one of those questions that maybe Jada talks about that I'm not supposed to ask, but we're going to ask it anyway. So when you look around at life enrichment and senior living as an industry, what do you think we mostly get wrong?
What do we think? What do I think we mostly get wrong? Okay, that's a good question. Here's how I'll answer that for you, Steve. I think that there needs to be a slight and subtle mind shift when we're talking about engagement. I think, a good activity calendar has activities, but a great activity calendar builds experiences. It's all about creating experiences for your resident and building upon those. So rather than asking yourself when you're building a calendar, for example, what activity should we do? How can I fill up this calendar? It's how can I create meaningful experiences for myself and for our residents? One thing that I learned early on, just by facilitating activities and doing programming, is if I brought things that I loved to the table, things that I'm interested in, and I share that with my residents, that they respond to that. I used to do I'm a big art history nerd, for example. I like art history. And so I would do whole sessions on art history where it's Pablo Picasso or Renoir or whoever. And I'd show art and we'd talk about the lives of these folks, so on and so forth. And my residents really respond to that. And in turn, doing that with the residents as well, letting the residents know you've lived these rich, these full, these incredible lives. You have these things that you can share with us, and please do so, including them in building that as well. So really shifting our focus from activities to experiences with our residents, I think is a shift that.
Uh-oh. Why don't you put me on there? Thank you. This is one of the wonderful things about live is you just never know what's going to happen. And so we just lost Ben here. And it's really a shame. I'm hoping he'll be back in a minute. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about what we're doing. And we've got Ben back. That's
Sorry
good.
about that.
I do a team meeting every Friday, Ben, and this morning, and my team is usually pretty talkative, and we got about 45 minutes into it, and I was done talking, and I said, I don't know what's going on here because you guys are so quiet, and they all made fun of me that I would run out of things to talk about. I guess maybe I was saving it for here. Okay, so let's get back to talking about your philosophy of life enrichment. One of the things I would love to dig into a little deeper, I think it just segues perfectly into what we were talking about, is you have this amazing focus on having residents drive the life enrichment. You're talking about experiences rather than activities, right?
Absolutely.
And I love this idea that really great life enrichment is experiences rather than activities. So how do you get residents to really get involved in making them be resident driven?
It's a great question. I'd say first and foremost, the first thing that you can do as a life enrichment director is have activity chats. That's an easy, quick way to do that with your residents. Set aside time on your calendar where you talk with your residents. Hey, here's what we've got planned for next month. Here's what we did last month. What did you like about it? What did you not like about what we did? How can we improve? What would you like to see more of? Having those kind of open door, honest conversations with your residents about what you're already doing that's great and what they'd like to see more of. That's kind of the first step to that. And then on top of that is, knowing your residents, right? Spending time with them is a big piece of that. Even for these resident chats, you are going to have residents who may not feel comfortable speaking up in those kind of group settings. So taking the time to getting to know your residents, speaking to them, getting to know what they're interested in and incorporating that in the calendar. Many of our residents have incredible skills. They have incredible backgrounds. They've lived these incredible lives. Implementing that into the calendar as well, letting the residents lead some of these activities if they want to do so, and sharing these things that they have, these wonderful things that they have to share with the broader community, are a couple of really great steps in moving in that direction.
Okay, so let's play a little hypothetical here. You have one of these groups where you're reviewing what you're doing, and you have some program that you've developed that Ben absolutely loves, right?
Sure.
And the residents all come in and say, "Oh man, we hate that thing. That's the worst thing of the week." How do you deal with that?
You hear them. That's fine. Okay. That's great. All right. You can't take these things personally, right? We're here for them. And I wanted to share something with you that I thought you'd enjoy, and you didn't. That's okay. You can't take that personally. resident engagement, life enrichment is ever evolving. We always have to be able to shift and pivot and change and make adjustments for our residents and as resident populations change. In that particular hypothetical, at least me, Ben personally, that would never offend me. I'm okay with that. What about it didn't you like? And then that's kind of the next step, right? What about it didn't you like? Did you not like the format? Did you not like the subject? Did you not like how I presented it? Was it my face? Did you not like me? I mean, what is it about it that you didn't like? It's okay to have those honest conversations with your residents. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I love that because each one of these is sort of an experiment. I teach fifth and sixth grade kids at church,
Mm,
and we play games, and I tend to get bored, and so I'm always using new games or inventing new games. And honestly, sometimes they just don't work very well.
yeah,
And I'm the first one to say, okay, because we're going to do the next one, and they know me pretty well. And so when you build this trust relationship, it works really well, right? So I love that.
absolutely.
Um, you are doing, I want to talk about your reading circle.
Okay.
I would love to hear about it, how it works. And as I understand it, you do this across communities, so it's not just in the community. So why don't you walk us through that?
Sure. So that's largely resident driven. My residents select the books. Um, uh, it stemmed from, like I said, when I go to communities, I like to speak to residents, and they hear that, I don't like this word, but they hear I'm the corporate guy. I'm going to different communities, and one of the most common questions that I get is, what are other communities like? What are the residents like there? Do they have similar activities? They are curious. How many communities do you have? It's genuinely one of the most common questions I get as I sit down and I speak with residents. So I kind of started thinking, what are ways that I can get them chatting with one another? What are some of the ways that I can do that? Again, this is where I brought it to the forefront. I'll be honest with you, Steve. Part of this was about keeping myself accountable because I like to read and I can get so busy that I forget to read. So now I have to read for work. And so, there's part of it is keeping myself accountable, but again, here's something that I like to do and that I can share with residents who also enjoy this. And it stemmed from this idea that residents they're curious about each other. They're curious about other communities. So this book club, that we've been doing has been going for about a year now. We've read 6 books and we've had incredible conversations. Sometimes they get very personal. Sometimes they stay a little more surface level. It depends on the book. But I found it to be small but mighty in how it's become effective. We have our core group who are really loyal to it and they really enjoy it, and of course our life enrichment directors themselves and in the community are truly driving that. At least on the day to day, and getting their residents the material and reading it with their residents and so on and so forth. So I'm incredibly grateful to those directors as well for their role that they're playing. None of what I do, Steve, could be possible without my wonderful engagement directors within the communities.
So let's talk a little bit about the mechanics. What kind of books are you using, and how are they selected? And is everybody reading the same book at the same time?
Yeah, so we're all reading the same book at the same time. We generally try to select books that have movie adaptations as well, so we can watch the movie adaptation and discuss them, and they are picked on a voting basis. We vote.
So each building picks a building, and then all the buildings vote, or
The buildings who participate, absolutely.
okay, how many buildings do you have participating?
For the book club, I would say it varies because sometimes you have residents who are not particularly interested in that book.
Okay,
I of course have my core group.
right.
But somewhere between half a dozen and a dozen,
Okay,
given
and then
given.
do they meet together like on Zoom or something to talk about the book?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and they do that once per book or multiple times per book?
Once per book.
Okay.
We do one large discussion after we've finished the book, and that generally takes place at a bi-monthly basis.
Okay, so they do more frequently at the local level, go through the book, and then gather together and hit the high points together. So,
Absolutely. Yep.
okay, cool. And then you've also got something called the Pegasus Playoffs.
Yeah,
Talk to me about that.
our Olympics style game. That one, as much as I've helped guide that one along a little bit, but as much as I'd love to take credit for that, I can't. That one was actually brought to me by one of our wonderful life enrichment directors who thought it'd be a good idea. So we strongly support and encourage sister community engagement. And we have some communities that are close to each other, within close proximity to each other. And so particularly we have a few communities in the Houston area who get together once a year and do Olympic style friendly competitions between the three of them. And they do it big. We cater, we invite family. We have food. We had food trucks last year. The residents from we pick one community. Residents from the other communities go to that one community. We host particular games. They're usually team games. And we have a winner. We have a champion every time we do this. So that's a ton of fun. Our residents love it.
What kind of activities or games do you play?
So it changes every year. We try to layer our engagement depending on kind of their dimensions, so to speak. So, some of them are quizzy and trivia, others are more physical, flip cup or beanbag toss, or it changes from year to year. But we definitely try to hit various types of activities so that everybody has a chance at doing something that they love to do.
Cool. We've got a question here. I think it's a worthwhile question. I don't know the answer to. How do you handle it for those who cannot hold a book steady or see to read?
Again, so I have nothing but admiration for my engagement directors who do handle this on a day-to-day basis. I have some engagement directors who read to their residents. They have slot times where they take the book and they read aloud to their residents. I have some engagement directors who use audiobooks and they sit around together and they do audiobooks while they enjoy snacks and refreshments. Some directors put it on a big TV screen so that the residents can see and read along together. There's no right or wrong way to do that. It's just about finding your cadence with your residents in order to, truly get them engaged. Because many of them, even though they might have lost the ability to do those things, used to love doing that. And so it's about finding the way to make that happen for them.
That I love that so much. One of the things that I've come across at least one or other organization that does a Olympic style game among communities, and I'm waiting for somebody to start pulling together communities from different companies and really cross pollinating that. I think that would be. I think it would be a lot of fun for the residents, the family members, team members. And I think that I'm always thinking, how do you make senior living look good in the eyes of the public? It would be a fantastic way. It would be a very newsworthy thing. So maybe you're the guy to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You've talked a little bit in some of the research I did. You've talked a little bit about how residents end up doing something that they didn't know they could do, and the delight that they get from that. And I think one of the terms you've used was that it restores identity. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I would speak to that on a more personal level in my background of doing engagement. So, of course, my background is in memory care. And I've worked with some wonderful life enrichment directors on the assisted living and independent living side as well. But I can tell you from firsthand experience doing things like give back programs or donations, certain things like that with residents who it's so unfortunate how often you feel like, oh, I can't do that anymore. I've lost dexterity, and then you work with them and they do it. This book club is a wonderful example of that. Oh, I never really truly thought that I'd be part of a book club again, and here I am. Or as you start building those relationships with the residents, you might have a resident who it all goes back to that quote, you grow because you stop playing. So you start losing these pieces of yourself because you don't nurture it, you don't water that part of yourself.
Yeah.
And if you help, you can't do all of it. Your resident has to want it as well. But if you help water those parts of themselves, you see it regrow. You see that piece of them come back. And once they do that thing, once they be part of that book club, once they do that service project, once they answer a question correctly, or they give their opinion on a discussion that you're having with them, or a group discussion you're having. You can see them light up. You can see them react and get excited, and kind of you almost see that old version of themselves kind of coming back, and that's really one of the most amazing things you can see in this line of work.
This is so good. One of the things that I spend quite a bit of time thinking about with engagement is that in any given community, you're going to find 10, 15, maybe 20% of the residents who are just naturally outgoing, who like to participate, who participate in everything. What do you do about the rest? The reason I ask this is I've got a stepfather who has been in and out of senior living. He's in a 6-bed community right now, and so nobody can really hide there. But he was in a larger community for a while, and people would come and say, "Hey, Gary, let's go do this," and he'd say, "Nah, I don't think so today." They were off. It was just one more person they didn't manage. How do you get the rest engaged? What do you do about that?
Um, that's a multi-layered question, Steve. For first things first, you have to understand that not everybody is going to engage in the same way. That different people have different engagement styles. Like you said, you're going to have your outgoing people who like the group projects and like the group activities and enjoy, that kind of socialization aspect. And then you're going to have people who thrive a little bit more in small groups, or thrive a little bit more in more resident-led intimate settings, or in one-on-one settings. Not everybody is going to engage in the same way. So as engagement leaders, as people who are fostering that engagement, you have to adapt, and you have to be able to address the individual styles there. The goal, of course, is never to force participation. You never you that defeats the whole purpose. This all goes back to kind of what I said at the beginning: is what we're doing is we're building relationships and we're fostering connections. That's what we want to do. So a key focus there is building that trust with your resident, building that relationship with your resident, helping residents build relationships with one another, um, and kind of building upon that, right? Once your resident trusts you, or has a good relationship with you, you can say like, "Hey, listen, I want you there. I want you there. It means something to me for you to be there." And a lot of the times that makes a difference, and that means so much to them to hear. And another piece to that, for what it's worth, is also understanding why your residents don't want to engage. Is it the environment? Is it the type of engagement? Is it the time of day? We want to always consider these things and be strategic about how we're approaching engagement with our residents, so that we can continue to create meaningful engagement with them.
So what I love about this so much is that I'm going to put some words in your mouth, and you can tell me I got it wrong if I do have it wrong. Is that when I see communities where residents are not engaging, it's easy to blame the resident. In my view, I blame the leadership of the community for not caring enough to get it done. And I think what I'm hearing from you is you have that same philosophy. And so you really take responsibility for saying, if somebody's not engaged, we got to go figure it out. Recognizing, of course, there are some people, there are a few people who just are never going to engage, who don't want to engage, who aren't fed by that.
I don't know if I'd word it as strongly, but
Okay.
I certainly, because just being someone who's been in those shoes and
Yeah.
working with those directors, it is hard. Saying it in the way that I'm saying it right now is it's easy to say, but truly doing it and figuring it out, and working with your team to engage that gentleman who really, really doesn't want to engage, and how can we get it done, and how many hours in a day do we have? It is one of those instances. It's easier said than done.
Yeah.
But on a broad level, absolutely. What we do is this is our job. We need to foster those connections and engagement, and do what we can to figure it out, and figure out how we can get those residents engaged. But that said, there's always going to be residents who just don't want to be engaged. It's just not
Yeah.
how they are. And if you've even got them sitting in the back listening to the music, and they're not participating and they're kind of off to the side or around the corner, that's a win for me, Steve. If you've got that gentleman.
And there he freezes again. This is oh, he looks like he's back on. Nope, there he goes. That we thought we had him back. I love this conversation so much because it really is senior living. The big win that senior living has is engaging with people, making, what we're really selling is we do have care, no question about it. Care is often what drives people to senior living, right? But the thing that makes senior living magical is when we give them these experiences. And that's exactly what we've been talking about. Ben, welcome back. I have one final question for you. We are just about done here. One final question. I'm a senior living operator. I'm watching this. I am thinking about life enrichment and thinking there's some things I could maybe be doing better. If you could give somebody who is in charge of either probably less likely to be somebody who's actually running life enrichment in a community, but a regional, somebody in the C-suite, something they should be doing on Monday morning after watching this, what would that thing they should go be doing, should be thinking about, should be talking to their team about?
Making that shift to experiences. Making that shift. At the end of the day, this work, what we do in life engagement, is all about building relationships. It's all about making connections, again, between residents and their peers, between residents and their staff, between residents and the external community. If we get that right, if we do that the way, in a meaningful, right way, we're not just filling time with our activities. We're creating meaningful experiences, and we are significantly improving quality of life and reducing social isolation at that as well.
Cool. Ben, thank you very much. This has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I love your heart for residents, for making their lives better, for creating great experiences. And we posted up links so you can find the work that he's doing. And maybe somebody out there in another organization is going to reach out and say, hey, Ben, we want to challenge you in your communities. That would be great fun. So have a great weekend. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for joining. Jada, thank you so much for producing behind the scenes. And if you're at Nick, I'd love to say hello, maybe do a little interview with you next week in Nashville.
All right. Thank you for having me, Steve.